Zulkarnain. And he has faith in Allah. But he's endowed by Allah with power to pursue any objective he chooses to pursue. And now he travels to the two ends of the earth. And the Quran gives us a taste of what the world could have been like when power rested on the foundations of faith. How is power used when power rests on the foundations of faith? He traveled to the setting of the sun, to the west, because the sun normally rises in the east. Even in Mali, is it? In the east, yeah. And he traveled to a place where there was water, a large body of water. You can't go beyond that. And the water was described. And our early Mufassirun were able to recognize that it was the Black Sea. It was dark, murky colored water, the Black Sea. And so you're traveling along the Caucasus Mountains. In this book, I have actually showed photographs of that area which is traveled. And there he came across a people, and Allah says, well, how will you use power with these people? And he responded and he said, those who commit acts of wickedness, of oppression, of dhulm, I will punish them. And when they return to you, you will also punish them. And so power is used to punish the oppressor. Did you hear that? And when power is used to punish the oppressor, there will be harmony between the world here under and the world above. And then he said, I will reward those who have faith and who are righteous in conduct. Treat them nicely. And so when power rests on the foundations of faith, power will promote the way of life of the one true religion. Power will promote and preserve the righteous way of life, the way of life of piety. What a world it could have been. And then he traveled in the opposite direction, in the direction of the rising of the sun. And since he travels to the end, it follows that he must also have traveled to a body of water beyond which he could not go. It's the two ends of the earth. And we've identified that. I don't have the time to provide all the evidence, but in this book we recognize it as the Caspian Sea. On this side is the Black Sea, on that side is the Caspian Sea, and between them two is the Caucasus Mountains. Caucasus? Caucasian? White Caucasian? Why are they all called white Caucasian? And they have no links with the Caucasus. Caucasus, Caucasian. And over here he came across a people for whom we had provided no sitr min duniha, other than the natural sitr. A people living an essentially primitive way of life, with no protection from the elements, other than that which is normal and natural for primitive people. When you come to such a people, and you have power, and your power rests on the foundations of faith, how do you relate with them? Number one, Zulkarnain had the compassion, the wisdom, the common sense to allow them to live unmolested, undisturbed, their primitive way of life. He didn't take their land from them at gunpoint and then reduce them to people living on reservations in North America. Am I wrong to point this out? Are you going to be annoyed with me for pointing this out? When Europe went to North America, that's what they found. A people living a primitive way of life, a natural way of life. They would hunt for only that much that they needed to eat. And they, excuse the word, they worshipped nature. Not worship in the blasphemous sense of the word, but they respected nature. They loved the clouds, they loved the flowers, they loved the earth. They respected the environment. For them it was blasphemous to corrupt the river and to pour raw sewage or treated sewage into a river or to the coastal waters. These people who didn't have PhDs from Harvard and Yale would look in horror. Are these human beings or are these beasts with their cell phones and their internet and their flying donkeys? I'm not impressed by all of that scientific and technological advancement. It doesn't impress me if you're taking sewage and pouring it into a river. You're not a human being. Can't you respect the earth? And so Zulkarnain had the compassion, the good sense, the wisdom to protect their way of life and leave them undisturbed. But more than that, suppose these people are sitting on oil in Brazil, and there's so much oil in the Caspian. Are you going to drive them off the land so you can exploit the oil? They're doing that every day. Every day. When power rests on the foundations of faith, then the rights of a human being supersede your rights to the economic resources of the land in which they live. Their rights come first. The human being comes first. And the oil on which he sits is not as important as his right as a human being. كَذَلِكَ وَقَدْ أَحَطْنَا بِمَا لَدَيْهِ خُبْرًا. Allah says, He left them as they were. And we understood how He responded. The language of the Quran is agonizingly brief. I can't find any other word to use. كَذَلِكَ وَقَدْ أَحَطْنَا بِمَا لَدَيْهِ خُبْرًا. Agonizingly brief.
And so now he travels in the third direction. إِذَا بَلَغَ بَيْنَ السَّدَّيْنِ. He comes to a place between a pass between two mountain ranges. On this side are mountains, on this side are mountains. And in between there is a pass. Can we locate geographically where we're talking about? Is it possible? A pass between two mountain ranges. And there he came across a people, لَا يَكَادُونَ يَفْقَهُونَ قَوْلًا. He came across a people whose language he could not understand. Because their language was unique. Their language had no connections with other language in that region. It was a language which was not connected with all the other languages in that region. It was a unique language. We're getting clues along the way, important clues for locating. When they had learned to communicate with each other, then these people spoke to Zulkarnain and said to him, Ya Zulkarnain, O Zulkarnain, Inna Yajuj wa Majuj mufsiduna fil ard. Gog and Magog are committing acts of fasad in our territory. There are many sins that we can commit, but only some of them are called crimes. A sin you punished up there, but a crime you punish here as well. And amongst the crimes, amongst the criminal acts that we can commit, there are gradations of punishment. Like if you steal, cut off your hand. But the punishment that is severest of all is the punishment for fasad. It is not only that which corrupts but also destroys. So societies can collapse. Societies can be destroyed because of fasad, not just individuals or families. And fasad comes in many different forms. For example, Sodom and Gomorrah and their homosexuality. That's fasad. The corruption of agriculture. That's fasad. Many different kinds of fasad described in the Quran. And a good student will want to do some research and write a paper on fasad in the Quran. So Gog and Magog have PhDs in fasad. And so the punishment is the most terrible of all. At the lowest level of punishment is banishment. But at the highest level of punishment, it is cut off the hands and feet on opposite sides and crucify them until death. That's the worst punishment in the Quran. And this is what Gog and Magog do. But in the hadith, Allah speaks about Gog and Magog and He says, I have created creatures of mind so powerful, Sahih Muslim, that none but I can destroy them. So they have almost an indestructible power. And they use their power exactly opposite to Zulkarnain. He uses his power to punish the oppressor. But they use their power to oppress. He uses his power to reward those who are righteous in conduct and treat them nicely. They use their power to wage war on the believers. He uses his power in such a way that shows respect for human rights. Even the human rights of the Aborigines of Australia, the human rights of the American Indian tribes who loved the earth and respected the sky and the rivers and the sea and the trees and the birds far more than the American people would ever do. How do you treat these people? He respected their human rights and left them as they were. But not Gog and Magog. Today the American Indians and the Canadian Indians are in prison. And they're drinking alcohol and they're wearing blue jeans and eating McDonald's hamburgers. That's where they are today, from what they were before. O Zulkarnain, can you help us? You have the power. Can you build a barrier to protect us from these people? He should have said, I don't need to build any barrier. I'll move in there and I'll beat them up. And they won't touch you anymore. Huh? Like if a Muslim woman is walking on the street of Brooklyn, nobody dares to molest her. Oh no, not a Muslim woman. Not in Brooklyn, not in Harlem, not in the Bronx. Because you make the mistake of molesting a Muslim woman, all the men will be on you like tigers. And they'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. So I don't need to build any barrier. I'll go and teach them a lesson they'll never forget. But no, he didn't say that. They said, we're prepared to pay you. He said, I don't need your money. What Allah has given to me is more valuable. He recognized that even though he had this power, his power was not enough to be able to go and teach them a lesson. So he agreed to build a barrier, recognizing that their power was so great that even he could not defeat them. What I need from you is your labor. Help me with your manpower. And I'm going to build a barrier between you. Now number 96, verse number 96. Bring me blocks of iron. And so that has to be a geographical location where there's iron ore. It has to be a geographical location where there are mountain ranges and a pass between the mountain ranges. It has to be a geographical location where on the left you have a body of water which is so dark and murky that visibility is very shallow. Okay? And it has to be an area where there are large deposits of iron ore. Bring me blocks of iron. And after he had covered the pass with blocks of iron, he said, build a furnace, blow with your bellows, and now bring me molten copper. So he poured the molten copper, and the engineers, we have an engineer here, tells me that this is to prevent rust. And after he had built the barrier and covered it, the Quran speaks, it changes from the word saddain to use another word, sadafain. In verse number 95, Atuni zubar al-hadid hatta iza sawa bayna sadafain. Previously the word used was saddain, but now the word used is sadafain. Saddain is two barriers, two mountain ranges, but sadafain is something else. It is like the two sides of a shell. We're going to have some pictures of this now. The two sides of a shell. You've been to the seashore. When you open a shell like this, it will join at the bottom but open at the top. That's the shape of the pass between the mountains. Join at the bottom, open at the top. So when he had blocked off this space, this sadafain, now the molten copper is put on it, and then he says, هذا رحمة من ربي. Gog and Magog could neither scale the barrier nor could they penetrate it, so they are now trapped behind the barrier. And so Zulkarnain now says, هذا رحمة من ربي. This barrier is constructed in consequence of Allah's kindness and grace. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي. But when that time comes of which my ward has warned, إِذَا فُتِحَتْ, they will not return to reclaim the town as their own until إِذَا فُتِحَتْ, until Gog and Magog are released. When that time comes for Gog and Magog to be released, so that Banu Israel are to be brought back to the Holy Land, جِئْنَا بِكُمْ لَفِيفًا, brought back as a motley crowd. At that time, جَعَلَهُ دَكَّا, Allah is going to bring down this barrier and it become dust. Would Alexander, the Greek general who worshipped Zeus and Mars and Venus, Venus was a goddess, instead of Allah, would he speak like this? And yet you have so many people saying Zulkarnain was Alexander, Or Zulkarnain was some Zoroastrian who was an emperor of Persia? Zulkarnain has to be someone who worships Allah, the one God. When that time comes of which my Lord has warned, He's going to cause this barrier to collapse, to become ruins. And then at that time, وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْدَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. Allah will then cause Gog and Magog, it seems, to surge against each other like waves crashing against each other. Or Allah will cause mankind to enter into an age of universal anarchy, with people surging against each other, clashing with each other all over the earth. وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْدَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. And when you see these things happening on the face of the earth, you know the trumpet is coming. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا وَعَرَضْنَا جَهَنَّمَ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَرْضًا. And on that day we shall place hell for all to see. In other words, this world is going to become a living hell before the eyes of those who deny the truth. الَّذِينَ كَانَتْ أَعْيُنُهُمْ فِي غِطَاءٍ عَنْ ذِكْرِي وَكَانُوا لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ السَّمْعَ. They are those whose eyes have been veiled against any remembrance of Allah. They could not bear to listen to the voice of truth. And then finally, this verse has to be included in the passage. أَفَحَسِبَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَن يَتَّخِذُوا عِبَادِي مِن دُونِي أَوْلِيَاءَ إِنَّا أَعْتَدْنَا جَهَنَّمَ لِلْكَافِرِينَ نُزُلًا. Do they who reject the truth, do they perchance believe that they would succeed in embracing my true servants who worship me, to become their awliya, their friends and their allies, while excluding me? And thus to trap them in the world which will become a living hell. Verily we have readied hell, Jahannam, to welcome all those who deny the truth. This is the passage of the Quran that introduces the subject of Gog and Magog. Now let's turn to the pictures and see whether we can locate. This is the Caucasus Mountains here, the white being the snow. And on the left side there is a body of water which is so dark and so murky, with so much algae in it, that it has been given a name. And that name has been there with it for many, many, many years. Even the time of Ibn Kathir. It's called the Black Sea. It's called the Black Sea. Why? Because it is so dark. If you go to the Mediterranean Sea and you're on a ship, you could see several meters underneath the water. But if you go to the Black Sea, you'd hardly be able to see more than 1 meter underneath the water. Ibn Kathir recognizes this to be the sea mentioned in the Quran as Hamiyah. On this side of the Black Sea is the Caspian Sea. And in between the Caspian and the Black Sea is this body of land. So we say that Zulkarnain is traveling in that direction to the west, and then in this direction to the east. And incidentally, the Caspian Sea was destined to hold a huge basin of oil. A huge basin of oil underneath the Caspian Sea. The Caucasus Mountains are an unbroken range of mountains. From that end to this end. But in between the Caucasus Mountains, there is one pass, only one, in between. It's called the Dariel Gorge. Let's see if we have photographs of that. Here we are, the Caspian Sea, you can see it here. The Black Sea out there, that's Turkey. This is Syria, this is Iraq, this is Iran. And further south is the Holy Land. Next. Here's a better photograph of the Caucasus Mountains, Black Sea, Caspian Sea next. The Black Sea. You can see how black it is. And I have this photograph in my book, Gog and Magog. The Russian fleet, nuclear-powered Russian fleet, is over here. Over here. So, when Gog and Magog are released, says the Hadith, the first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee. That's where the Sea of Galilee is, north of Jerusalem. The Sea of Galilee is north of Jerusalem. And Gog and Magog are heading for Jerusalem. The word Jerusalem does not occur in the Hadith. It's the word Baitul Maqdis. So Gog and Magog are going to come down. The word Baitul Maqdis is actually there in the Hadith. Gog and Magog are going to come down to Baitul Maqdis. And in the process of going to Baitul Maqdis, they're going to pass by the Sea of Galilee. So they're coming from the north. They're coming from here. Alright? So Zulkarnain travels this way and then this way. And in between is the passage. See if you can find that. The passageway between. Here we are. There is the gorge, and there's one side, and there's the other side. And it's like an open shell. See, the Quran is describing this Sadafain. There they are again, the Sadafain. Go ahead. Oh, terrible. An open shell. No, this is better than the one I have in my book. The one in my book is really ugly. An open shell. So we see the two sides of the shell there. Alright? So previously the Quran had used the word Sadain, but now it uses the word Sadafain. The two sides of an open shell like that. Go ahead. So we have, I believe, established for you the geographical location of Gog and Magog. A people who are located behind the barrier. Behind the barrier, on that side of the Caucasus, were the Khaza, a tribe of people who converted and became Jews. Must have been on a Sunday morning. And some of them converted from Judaism and became Christians. Must have been on a Sunday evening. So you have Khaza who are Jews, and you have Khaza who are Christians. But they did not become Jews because of religious conviction. They became Jews as a matter of political convenience. So they don't particularly care for Torah and for the laws of diet and so on. So these are people who are Jews as a nation, but not as a religion. Huh? A nation, not a religion. These are the people who today control power in the world. Now I have to make a confession. In this book, I came to the conclusion that Gog and Magog are the two rival powers in the world today. The Russian-led alliance I identified as Magog, and the Anglo-American alliance I recognize as Gog. I think that is now inadequate. Rather, a more accurate analysis would be that Gog and Magog are located within both the superpowers. And Gog and Magog are taking both the superpowers to their destruction. Because when the two superpowers have already been used to serve Israel and to serve the Zionists, they don't need them anymore. And so when the two superpowers are taken on a ride until they clash with each other, with the nuclear war, there will be mutual destruction. They will be destroyed, but not Gog and Magog. That's where I made my mistake. Gog and Magog will not be destroyed by the Malhama. Gog and Magog will still survive the Malhama. And Gog and Magog are now going to use their power to ensure that Israel rules the world. And it is only when Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns, which is long after the Malhama, only then will Gog and Magog be destroyed. So when you read this book, I'm going to have to put in an extra paragraph or so now to give this additional explanation. Now, the Prophet ﷺ also spoke about Dajjal, that Allah had created a being and programmed that being to impersonate the true Messiah. They rejected him, the true Messiah, and they're waiting for the true Messiah to come. And so Allah is going to send into the world someone who will impersonate the true Messiah. And he is Dajjal. He will appear as a human being. He will appear as a Jew, as a young man who will be powerfully built, and I used to say who would have curly hair. Until an Egyptian came, he explained to me, he says, no, sheikh, the Orthodox Jews have to wear curls at their side here. And that is what the Prophet is speaking about. And you see them in Brooklyn with the curls at the side, okay? So he would be a human being. He would appear rather as a human being. As a young man, powerfully built, a Jew with curls. And he's going to stand up in Jerusalem. I don't say he's going to appear in Jerusalem. He could appear somewhere else, but he will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, I am the Messiah. And all those who had eyes and couldn't see would recognize him as the Messiah. He would have deceived them. His name is Dajjal because he deceives. He has a PhD in deception. In order for him to successfully impersonate the Messiah, he's got to rule the world. He's got to establish his power as the supreme power in the world. When he has done that, he has to rule the world from the Holy Land. Only then he can declare, I am the Messiah. A convenient earthquake will have to take place, which will bring down Masjid al-Aqsa, and they have the power to do convenient earthquakes. And then he has to rebuild the temple. And then he declares, I am the Messiah, and they'll accept him as the Messiah. But he would not be the Messiah, he would be Dajjal. In this book, I have explained, and this is not a hadith, it's a logical deduction. In order for him to successfully impersonate the Messiah, number one, he'll have to liberate the Holy Land, which is under control of Muslims. Liberate it for the Jews, that is. He's already done that. He's already done that. Number two, he'll have to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own. He's already done that. Number three, he'll have to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land and get them to believe that this is Holy Israel when it's an impostor. He's already done that. Number four, he'll have to cause that Israel to become the ruling state in the world. Israel may already be ruling the world today, but is doing it from behind the hijab. But in order for Israel to be recognized as the ruling state, the hijab has to be moved. Israel cannot rule the world while the United States is the ruling power. In this book, I have analyzed a hadith that when Dajjal is released, he live on earth for 40 days, a day like a year, a day like a month, a day like a week, etc. And I have come to the conclusion that in a day like a year, which was stage one, he caused Britain to become the ruling state in the world. In a day which is like a year, in stage one, Dajjal caused the island of Britain to become the ruling state in the world. And so the world experienced Pax Britannica. I'm choosing my words very carefully, so you don't say to me that the day like a year began on such and such a day, and then start mathematical calculations for me. No, I don't want you to do that. So the world experienced Pax Britannica. If you have another explanation for the emergence of Pax Britannica, do please let me know. This is my explanation. And then a day like a month succeeded a day like a year, and Pax Britannica had to give way to Pax Americana. And the United States became the next ruling state in the world, with a mysterious relationship with the Holy Land and with Israel. And my explanation is that this is Dajjal in stage number two. If you have a better explanation, I'd love to hear it. But there's such a profound silence from the world of Islamic scholarship, and such a profound and embarrassing silence from Islamic movements, many of which now form governments in the world. They don't want to hear the subject. It's too inconvenient for them. And such a profound and embarrassing silence from scholars who otherwise are recognized as great scholars. But if the Quran explains all things, what is the explanation for Pax Britannica? What is the explanation for Pax Americana? How is it that Imran N Hosein, who is not an economist, who is not a monetary economist, no, who studied economics and studied monetary economics as part of his studies in international relations, that doesn't make you an expert. How is it that Imran N Hosein 15 years ago or more was able to declare publicly and put it down in writing that the US dollar must collapse. I didn't say that the US dollar will collapse. I said more than that. I said the US dollar must collapse. The monetary system must collapse. And it must give way to another monetary system. 15 years ago I was talking about a new monetary system of cashless money. You can't see it, you can't touch it. Electronic money. Today we are on the doorstep of the collapse of the US dollar. Where did I get the knowledge from? Was it a jinn whispering in my ear? Was it an angel whispering in the other ear? When will they wake up? This is not whisperings in my ear. This is scholarship. This is the application of a methodology to the sustained study of Akhir Zaman. That's where I got it from. And so as you study the subject of Dajjal, you'll understand political history, and you'll understand economic history, and you'll understand how to respond. I'm only introducing the response now. In the next session, we'll speak more about the response. Dajjal is about to move to a day which is like a week. And in that day which is like a week, Israel has to take over from the United States as the next ruling state in the world. And they ask me, how can little Israel rule the world? And I say to them, you dumb. Is there any American politician in the ruling state in the world today who has any kind of a hope to win an election if he stands up against Israel? You dumb. Israel controls the United States of America. And the President of Israel, or the Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, he said that. We control the United States. He said it publicly. So it's not little Israel. It is the Zionist movement, it's the Anglo-American alliance, which is now a Zionist alliance. It is Gog and Magog. They are the ones who control power in the world, and they are delivering to Israel the status of ruling state in the world. In order for Israel to rule the world, it has to rule over the Arabs. And so you had the first Arab Spring 100 years ago. You've got to study history. This is not the first Arab Spring. The first Arab Spring was 100 years ago. And that first Arab Spring eased out the Ottoman Empire and brought into being client states that were overtly client states. Saudi Arabia, who will now control the heartland of Islam on behalf of the Zionists. It brought into being governments and rulers who now acted on behalf of the Zionists. The second Arab Spring is doing the same thing. The biggest obstacle in the way is Syria. And the most important plum in the whole basket is Syria. Is Syria. And in order for them to rule the world, they got to rule over the Arabs. To rule over the Arabs, you have to decimate the Arabs. You can't have so many Arabs, there are too many Arabs. And so, وَيْلٌ لِلْعَرَبِ مِنْ شَرٍّ قَدْ اقْتَرَبَ, said Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Woe unto the Arabs, because of a great evil which is going to come upon them. It's close. Gog and Magog. And he prophesied that the Arabs are going to be wiped out by plague. So biological warfare. The Arab Spring is meant to lead to the Arab slaughter. So you have a manageable Arab population in the world. And when the attack on the Arabs takes place, the biological one, the only place where you can find safety is in Makkah and Medina. Because neither Dajjal nor plague can enter into Makkah and Medina. When Israel rules the world, it will be for a day which is like a week, a short period of time. And that will be the time of the most intense oppression for Muslims. At the end of that day, which is like a week, we're going to experience the emergence of Dajjal in person. But before Dajjal can appear in person, two things must occur. Before Dajjal can appear in person, two things must occur. Number one, the Malhama, or the Great War, which will make the First World War and the Second World War look like a fight over peanuts. So great will that war be. And after that, what's the next one? What comes after the Malhama? The conquest of Constantinople. And after the conquest of Constantinople, then comes the Khuruj of Dajjal. Dajjal was released in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكَ لَيَبْعَثَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ يَسُومُهُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. Gog and Magog were released at that time. Dajjal was released at that time. But Dajjal is not in our world of space and time. But now, after the conquest of Constantinople, Dajjal will have his Khuruj. So you're going to see him in person, Mr. Dajjal himself. At that time, Medina will be attacked. Dajjal is going to land outside of Medina, in salty, marshy land outside of Medina. Meaning the Israeli armed forces are going to attack Medina. And at that time, Medina is going to shake 3 times. And every kafir and every munafiq will be thrown out. So they're going to be kuffar in Medina and munafiqun. And they're going to join Dajjal. And the angels are going to bar Dajjal from entering Medina and divert his attack to Damascus. And when Dajjal reaches Damascus, then the 3 main actors of Akhir Zaman will all be together in the same geographical location. Number 1, Dajjal, followed by 70,000 Jews from Isfahan wearing their Persian shawls, as the hadith. Number 2, someone whose name I have not mentioned so far, Imam al-Mahdi. But I do have several lectures on the topic, and we have them right here. Imam al-Mahdi. And he will be inside the masjid, and Dajjal will be outside. The time of Salat. The first time the Messiah came, Allah appointed someone to positively identify the Messiah. Who was he? John the Baptist. The second time that the Messiah comes, Allah appoints someone to positively identify him. Who is he? Imam al-Mahdi. John the Baptist said, here he is, there's the man you've been waiting for, this is the Messiah. Pointing to his cousin, Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Imam al-Mahdi is about to lead the Salat when Dajjal Nabi Isa alayhi salam comes down. Comes down from the sky with his hands resting on the wings of 2 angels. And as he comes down in the masjid, the Imam will say, this is the son of Mary. This is Nabi Isa alayhi salam. History repeats itself, positive identification. And then the Imam will invite him to lead the Salah. I say, no, you've been appointed by the Jama'ah, you lead the Salat. And he will pray with us in accordance with the Sharia, which came to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. It is after the Salat is over that he say, open the gates, because the masjid is barricaded. And Dajjal is outside. And Imam al-Mahdi is inside. And Nabi Isa alayhi salam is inside. The three main actors of Akhiru Zaman in one place. Damascus. So the story of Damascus is not going to end with some foreign armed and foreign finance people overtaking the country on behalf of the Zionists. The story of Damascus will end only on that day. As he opens the gate and Dajjal sees him, Dajjal is going to melt like salt melts in water. And he's going to flee. Running. Today they're stamping their feet on the earth as bloody oppressors. But tomorrow they're going to be running. Yes, tomorrow they're going to be running. So good news for Gaza, hold on. Tomorrow they're going to be running. And Nabi Isa alayhi salam will pursue him and overtake him in a place called Lud and kill him. It is my opinion that when he is killed, he's going to pass into non-existence. Because he was programmed to act as he did. So he doesn't have to stand before Allah for judgment and to answer for his conduct and to be rewarded or to be punished. No, because Allah created him as a special creation. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. An evil creation to test mankind and to punish mankind. How do we respond to the awesome facade of Gog and Magog? And how do we respond to the oppression of the Dajjal? My answer is, you can't beat them. This is a sinking ship. They're taking all of mankind down with it. And if you're on board a sinking ship, and you know it is sinking, and you cannot prevent it from sinking, what do? Do you collect money and build $1 million masjid? Huh? No. If you're on board a ship and it's sinking, and all those who go down with that ship are going into the hellfire, you can't prevent it from sinking, then the only thing that a sensible, intelligent person would do is to get off that ship. And that's what the young man did in Surah Al-Kahf. It is a philosophy of withdrawal from a godless world to preserve faith. Let us end now with the hadith. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, there are some who would have difficulties with the Prophet, you know. Why did he say this? Why can't we be a part of mainstream society? What's wrong with the blue jeans Jamaat? Yes. So why did he say it? But this is what he said. He said the time would come when a believer, in order to preserve faith, would have to flee to the mountainsides where rain falls and take with him some sheep and goats, which means withdrawal from the godless world to preserve faith. This is our response. Those who choose to remain in the cities, you must know that every city and every town is going to be destroyed. Surah Al-Isra. And those which are not destroyed are going to be punished with terrible punishment. We say withdraw to the remote countryside and build small communities of people who worship Allah with sincerity in their hearts. And we call that the Muslim village. The Muslim village will unite our people. So no sectarianism. No. The Quran and the Sunnah will unite our people. I have much more to say on the subject, but that will be in the next session, inshallah. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا رحمن
على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم إلهي لست للفردوس أهلا ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم Tuhanku aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku ampunkanlah dosaku sesungguhnya engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar Tuhanku aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku ampunkanlah dosaku sesungguhnya engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar